Thank you. I like to think so. I like to think so. I haven't tried to hold breath for 30 minutes. I think 25 is, where I'm maxed out.
Don't push the envelope. You got a ways to go.
Thank you.
Great meeting you.
Likewise.
Well, what a way to make our alma mater proud to accomplish what you accomplished in high school and have already set out to do at Columbia.
Thank you. I think it feels like, when you leave ETHS, you leave with such a strong support system. I've already been talking with teachers and my counselor since being here. And so it always feels like you're carrying the community with you. And that's what I'm most grateful for.
Yeah.
Carrying the community with you, man.
It's heavy.
Very heavy.
Responsibility.
So I've got JT waiting to come in. We're gonna bring JT in.
Great.
1 second. I'm going to.
Good morning.
Good morning. Can you hear us?
JT.
We can hear you. You can't hear us?
Morning, JT.
Let's see.
Oh, I can hear now.
Quinn, do you have a couple moments after the 10:30?
I do.
Okay, great. So we're just going to get our bearings here. We're going to wait a moment for Steve. I texted him, and then we will be able to get going. I'm trying to block that light so it looks just like I have a halo, but let's see if I can move this.
Edit up, Laurice.
Oh!
I kind of inspire people that way. So yeah, it was nice getting to talk to you. This is Ron Whitmore. Ron Whitmore is my partner in the podcast.
JT, how are you?
Good. How are you? Did we go to school at the same time?
When did you graduate?
89.
Yeah.
I thought so. I feel like you might have been in a gym class with me, maybe.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Keep going.
Bad prevaricator.
JT, I graduated in 80.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I had a cousin.
You would not know.
Because I look so young.
That's right. Look at that skin, that tight jawline.
I mean, it's just beautiful.
How are you feeling this morning after our raucous evening last night?
Rock and roll.
There you go. JT, I'm hearing great things about you. Quinn or Elizabeth has been bragging on you guys so very much. So I feel like I know you.
Awesome.
And I'm so happy to kind of have this dialogue and conversation. I don't know how much you guys know about Evanston Rules, but check us out. We're having some very good conversations about some very good topics.
Awesome.
Yes.
And I think you all would make really awesome guests on the show. Just, talking about life and yourselves and what's going on and what you think. And, there's a lot there, we can love, as James Baldwin said, I love America. And that's precisely the reason why I feel free to be able to criticize. And that's what we kind of feel about Evanston. We have a lot of love for Evanston. And yet we also recognize that there are a lot of issues. But I think that's the world, right? And I think that when we get tired and all of that, we can't get tired. There's no such thing. Ron has a friend we were on a call with, and she said, I was looking forward to retirement. And she said, but there's no such thing as retirement from social issues and doing the right thing. I'm reaching out to Steve again.
So I'm also a basketball coach for FAM. That this very powerful person, Willie Miller, who used to be on the board of Evanston 202, told me I had to do. And how do you tell somebody that powerful? No. So I have my ear pod in because we're on a girls basketball meeting.
Not participating.
And I'm not participating, but I took the team in my first year of coaching. They had not made the playoffs to the playoffs in fourth.
Amazing.
That's so awesome.
Won one playoff game.
What age girls do you have?
Middle school.
Middle school.
I don't know if you guys know anything about the history of FAM,
Mm-mm.
Ronnie.
It's a basketball league that was started 30 years ago to try to provide African-American youth some mentoring and opportunities on the basketball court. And over the years, it has gotten very Neapolitan. People from Winnetka and Wilmette are participating, but these are some very, these guys, that's why New Trier is getting so good. I mean, they've always
I
been.
had no idea. Really?
Yeah.
People from up north come to play
Oh, yeah.
basketball?
Yeah, it's a serious league.
Interesting.
But it was a place when there weren't programs for a lot of Black kids, that programs opened up. And a lot of the leaders, like Bill Logan, was Bill Logan a founder?
Bill Logan, Gene Bell, Bob Reese, Willie Miller. There's so many guys.
Bill Logan was the police chief years ago, first Black police chief. And he has a number of kids who are here in town also making a difference. Okay.
Will it be an issue if you see my roommate like walking back and forth throughout the room?
Look, I've got a giraffe that's in this house. It's called Run By, and a bear and a raccoon and a skunk. So
I have a puppy that will be
so-
joining us at some point.
So honestly, yeah, just tell him to do something very, very cool.
Okay.
Like the Minister of Silly Walks, something like that, and we'll be good. But I'm sorry, I'm waiting for
For Steve.
Steve. So we'll wait a couple more minutes and then we'll start and then we'll just let Steve in.
On the basketball note, I ran into Blake Griffin yesterday when we were walking around New York City.
Yeah.
Yeah. New
Blake
York
Griffin,
moment.
was in LA for a long time.
Yeah. And I think he's on the Nets now.
Yeah.
yeah, big
and so it was
person,
for-
huh?
Yeah, so that's what we were walking past the restaurant, and I noticed one of Drake's close friends standing outside the restaurant with this really tall guy. And so we're walking, and I'm like, that guy looks awfully familiar. And he was wearing a hat. And so it's just his like this section. And I was like, that person looks an awful lot like Blake Griffin. And it just like after a minute and there are a couple other well-known people who were kind of milling around. So I was like, there's not someone that looks that much like Blake Griffin that's just gonna be hanging like, just on the street. And so it was, and then when you put it together, I was like, oh my goodness.
New York moments.
New
New York
York moments
moment.
are the best. They are the best. You see, I mean, when theater was happening, you would go to theater and then the stars would just walk out the side door like everybody else. It's a perfect place.
I saw Joan Rivers at the Rockettes one time.
Joan Rivers, she was something else. She wrote one of the all-time best movies called The Girl Most Likely, and it had Stockard Channing in it. And
Oh, I should see that.
Stockard
I love
Channing, who
Stockard
grew up
Channing.
as a girl who got teased and abused, and people weren't nice to her, and they did horrible things to her. And then she went and she had a car accident, had plastic surgery.
This
And
is an after-school special.
it kind of was, but it wasn't. and she then goes back and she gets rid of them one by one with these great scenes, like the cheerleader. She has her do backflips. She's like, do another one. She does it out the window.
Yeah.
Well, so I think that, yeah, why don't we go ahead and start, and Steve will join us as he is able. I was hoping to have him on. I am recording. So I think that what I'd like to say is we are so thrilled to be here, to be part of Boosterpalooza. When Elizabeth, who is chairing Boosterpalooza this year, called us and asked us if we would participate, we were thrilled, having done it last year with a few kids from SOAR, and the conversation was really, really awesome. They had such incredible things to add, so that we were almost just here being able to learn as well. And I know that that's what's going to happen today. Evanston Rules, we've been a podcast this is our second season, and it's me and Ron Whitmore, and we are the team that puts this together. And what we've tried to do is have conversations with people about things that are important to us and that resonate with people. And hopefully, if people aren't aware of them, that they become a bit more aware and can perhaps change some behaviors around some of these things and understand that what we feel is important, and there's a lot of work to be done. Ron, what would you like to add?
Yeah, I just think it's a great opportunity for the listeners to get more engaged and learn about what Boosterpalooza is, what Boosterpalooza is not, and what Boosterpalooza can be, right? In terms of providing access and opportunities connected to extracurricular activities, right? You know, there are often times that we find a specific sweet spot, right? But in that sweet spot, there are a lot of people that are left out. And how do we use Boosterpalooza as an opportunity to create that menu that provides a plethora of opportunities for all the marvelous people that Evanston has in it? So we kind of want to unpack that thinking today. We want to hear what your thoughts are about Boosterpalooza and how do we, through this dialogue, inform and make it even better for everyone.
So Elizabeth, do you mind telling us a little bit about the boosters and what the boosters do?
Well, the boosters were founded in 1976 with the aim of, well, originally supporting athletics at the high school as a sort of separate entity from school-based funding. And one of the things about the boosters that appealed to me, you know, as sort of not an athlete, is that the boosters are, the ETHS boosters specifically, are one of the only booster organizations in our area and in a wider area even than just the North Shore that support not only athletics, but academic clubs, the arts, theater, music, visual arts. And so I think the Boosters organization has this incredible potential to support our town's students in a way that even the school itself can't support them. I was attracted to joining the board of the Boosters, not only because I'm an alum, but because I'm a parent, I'm an educator, and the concept of the Boosters really made me start thinking about the concept of legacy. And when I started thinking about people who might join in this conversation, I wanted to make sure that we had someone like Quinn, who's at the very beginning of creating his personal legacy, you know, having just graduated from the high school with extremely impressive credentials and at a point of inspiration that's different from maybe where JT and I are, or you guys are, Ronnie and Laurice. And so I think that one of my interests in joining the Boosters was to help the organization refocus on what we can do with our money eventually that can change the lives of our kids, not just when they're playing their flute in the band, not just when they have an opportunity to travel to Atlanta to a debate tournament, not just when their basketball team goes to the conference championships, but 10 years later, 20 years later, 30 years later, when they come back to Evanston and want to raise their own kids or don't want to raise their own kids but still want to plug into the community. So I think we have this potential to make this lasting impact that's more than buying a t-shirt at a football game. And the other thing that inspired me was we're in this re-engagement period, this, I don't know, I wanted to say post-pandemic, but I guess I really have to say mid-pandemic, reorganizing of how our kids engage with school. And we know that the kids who come to school with tons of privilege have lots of entrances into that engagement. And we know that the kids that have less privilege have a harder time finding those entrance points. And the activities that our incredible school provides is one of those huge openings. So we need to make sure that everybody, especially the kids that don't come in dripping with privilege, have access. It's the point of what we do.
And what is privilege though? What is privilege?
I mean, it could be so many things, right? It starts with skin color. We know that, especially in Evanston. It probably money is number 2 on the list. I don't know. You guys agree? Those would be 1 and 2 in some order. Who you know? Evanston's a connected place. We know that, right? What do we say? Evanston is everywhere.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. I think in our conversations with the podcast and hearing you talk about this notion of access and kind of spreading the net a little further, right? How does Boosterpalooza get into this DEI space as well, right? And have that, and what resonated with me, you said, when we go away and come back to Evanston, because everybody comes back to Evanston, right? It's interesting though, how the races come back after college, right? And how connected we were in high school, but how disconnected we seem to be as we come back home, because life and experiences, race and access and opportunity and perception kind of muddies the water. How does Boosterpalooza or the boosters really think about creating that diversity conversation or arm that reacclimates people back to Evanston when they go away?
Well, I think you and I agree that that's an unanswered question. So, I mean, I think this is the beginning of answering that question. Or last year maybe was the beginning of answering that question. And I do think that the pandemic has pushed into the spotlight some conversations that maybe would not have happened naturally. And so, you know, sometimes I think to get through, we think about the blessings of something like the pandemic, you know. I think on a day like today, 9/11, we think about, you know, some of those small connections that occurred that maybe changed lives. And so, unfortunately, I don't think we have an answer to that question, but I think our job is to start to, our job is to continue to develop the organization and our event so that it does start to answer that question.
Right, and that's what I'm leaning into, right? That consistent conversation about the opportunity. The dialogue will change, right? But Evanston being, so Evanstonians have a common language. Evanston's so diverse, it's such a great place to live. Everybody gets along, right? It's that conversation that happens all the time, right? But those of us that are woke don't necessarily always believe that.
I'm going to have us pause now because we're bringing in Steve Johnson, who is the additional person on our panel.
So as we come back in, sorry, Laurice, as we come back in, I'd like to hear like from JT and Quinn about kind of how do we lean into reacclimating Evanstonians into what we all pride ourselves on being, and how do we turn that into action rather than just words?
And how do the boosters help that? How do the programs help that? First, though, I'll do an introduction with Steve, and then we can move through. Steve Johnson coming in strong with his hat. Looking cool.
I know.
Okay, wait just a second.
Here he comes.
My people college.
Good morning.
Nice shirt, dude. I love it.
We've got, we have a kid who's going to college
That's,
on the,
so we are
What's up, Steve?
recording. We have started and we are welcoming you into our conversation. We just started talking about a bit about the boosters, a bit about Evanston and the perceptions, some of the realities that are awesome, some that are not. I think that before we move along, let's just do quick introductions because though we're in the middle of something, I think we can find our way back to it. We started with Elizabeth. Elizabeth, I know you answered a question, but can you tell us just a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm a 1988 alum of Evanston Township High School, native Evanstonian. Well, actually, I guess maybe I'm not. I was actually born in Chicago, but we lived in Evanston pretty much right after that. I am the mom of a freshman at the high school this year, which is a really interesting experience. I am a former high school teacher, a former opera singer. I am a wellness and mental health expert. I'm finishing my clinicals, and so I'll be a therapist. And I'm also the co-chair of Boosterpalooza for the ETHS Boosters with my friend Steve Johnson, who I got to reconnect with this year. And it's been a little bit of a crazy, too rushed experience, but we are looking forward to a great weekend this weekend.
Thank you for taking this on. Steve.
all right, I'm a Evanstonian, not born, but mostly raised, and returned back in 2014. And we've got 3 children, with the last of which is going to college to England, which is what this morning was all about, and checking and making sure people are COVID free before they get on a plane. But I'm a communications professional, been doing that for 28 years, have my own shop and do a lot of crisis media, nowadays equity communications. And we moved back to Evanston because we were tired of the rat race to get into a high school of repute in the city, and our neighborhood was starting to look like Hinsdale, and that really wasn't what we were into.
Not hating on Hinsdale, but perhaps a little bit. Quinn, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. My name is Quinn Hughes. My pronouns are he, him. I'm a class of 2021 ETHS graduate. Living currently in New York City. I'm a first-year student at Columbia University. Thinking of pursuing a major in architecture and art history, but all things are subject to change. Yeah, very excited to be here. Very grateful to be talking about Evanston and representing Evanston on the East Coast.
Thank you. JT?
Hi, I'm JT Newman. Non-binary queer. My pronouns are she, they. And I am a 1989 alum of ETHS. Elizabeth and I were friends in choir in high school. I just moved back to Evanston last year during the pandemic from Brooklyn. And I am a development director, so I do fundraising, and I work for the Chicago High School for the Arts. And I'm sure we'll get into it, but one of the things that I always say about Evanston is that the grounding and training that I got in the arts through extracurricular activities is the reason I am where I am today.
Awesome. So Steve, we're going to jump back in. Ronnie, do you want to continue with Quinn and JT?
So yeah, Quinn and JT, I was just trying to get you to lean in on kind of the Boosterpalooza's opportunity to re-engage Evanstonians as they leave into really understanding what Evanston is and what the world does to us once we leave Evanston, right? We leave as these great people that talk about kumbaya and how well we get along and how diverse it is and how I have all kind of friends. And often when we go out in the world and come back, we tend to change based on access, opportunity, culture relevance, the lack thereof, et cetera, et cetera. So how would you use this platform to help the boosters create a platform to help people way back into Evanston?
Yeah. So for me, from 1989, in the 80s, to me, I was like, Elizabeth, why are you on the Booster Club? That is a football thing. So that was my impression of the Boosters back in the 80s, was that that's something that is football related, and I don't know what it is. So I'm not sure how we use it as a platform to come back as adults, except for that, encouraging the boosters to raise money for all of the different extracurriculars helps the kids to, I don't want to say integrate, but helps the kids to mix and mingle within different groups that they aren't necessarily in classes. I don't know if it's still an issue, but in the 1980s, like, we were in tracks. So I was in the honors and AP track, and I only saw honors and AP students. And I felt like perhaps there was a little bit of weighing of white students go into the honors and AP track.
Did you say a little bit?
A little bit, a lot.
Or a lot of it.
White students got pushed into honors and AP, and kids of color got pushed into the regulars classes. And I remember it being distinct because I was failing geometry. I got a D in geometry. It's like my first bad grade ever in high school, sophomore year. And I switched down to regulars geometry, and all the kids of color were in that class. So it was pretty wild. But I think, in terms of the boosters encouraging mixing and mingling based on activities and interests, I think is a really important thing. And that's like where we meet. We meet on common interests. We meet on, we like to sing, we like to dance, we like to play football. I almost said do football. Wow, that's how unsporty I am. We like to do football. Yeah. And I think that, coming back in, Elizabeth's point about, having a kid at the high school and wanting to encourage that is valid. I have a 9-year-old, I'm a step parent to a 9-year-old who's at Oakton School. So we're looking forward to when they go, they're non-binary also, when they go to high school.
Awesome. Steve, so you've been on the board. You were a student at ETHS. You went through the Evanston school system, and you've raised 3 kids who've now graduated out. Boosters, when people hear the word, they think of sports, as you were saying, JT. Why, it's all about that. But there's something different with Evanston Boosters.
Yeah, well, it's one of the only, if not the only, at least in the CSL, Central Suburban Leagues, that does more than just the athletics. It's for every student organization that has become accredited through the high school. All the arts, any club. A great example of that was my youngest, who did just finish, started up the D&D club, which was his way of being able to play D&D, Dungeons and Dragons, while also getting Dunkin' Donuts. So they started that up. I think he was a sophomore, and now I think it's the largest club in the school.
Nice.
And it's massive. There are all these kids that play. It's really cool. And they ask for dice, because you need to have all the crazy dice for the game and things like that. That's all they asked for, but they got money from the boosters to be able to do that. In fact, we spent a lot more time. The last time I remember us meeting within the halls of Evanston Township High School, those last couple of meetings before everything broke apart, we're sitting here saying, we need more clubs to ask us for money. Okay. The sports teams, the athletic teams, they're always asking for things. The arts, they ask for some decent stuff. They're in there, especially as Matt Bufus is building an amazing band and marching band program at Evanston Township.
Oh,
yeah, they're asking for stuff, but clubs, I think they know that it's available, but if anything, the boosters at Evanston Township High School are pushing so hard to get every student organization to take some funding, to get to what they need, to get more kids involved, to get them to engage with each other, etc.
So I want to take a quick second, because one other piece that we did not talk about is we're here to talk about this. We're here to talk about all the things about race, about opportunity, about lack thereof, about how people are perceived, about changing some of that. But what we're also here to do is to raise money so that people can continue to participate in these programs. And these things don't happen for free, and we're lucky in Evanston that there are people who will give and recognize the importance of giving to something that is not classically the big fundraiser, but is a group that's looking to get dice or to play D&D or to get Dunkin' Donuts or to go on the band or to think of something that we might not have thought of. And the idea that you can be creative, that you can think of something and make it happen is huge. It's empowering. Quinn, what did you participate in and what makes you a fan of the Boosters?
Sure. So in high school, the clubs that I participated the most in would have been SOAR, so Students Organized Against Racism, the debate team, and the newspaper, the Evanstonian. I think that for me, the value of the participation in these clubs is not only the hard skills that I gained from each kind of platform that each organization was intentional about participating in, but a connection to a school community, meeting with peers, meeting with teachers, meeting with kids around the country who shared common interests. That is the true value of participating in these activities. And I think that some, especially the activities that I kind of just mentioned, are good about making their presence known. But I think what the true value of the boosters is they have the power to incorporate kids and students into the community in ways that their interests are kind of naturally fostered and encouraged by the school. I love the Dungeons and Dragons Club, and I think that that's such a wonderful example, because that's students saying, this is what I love to do, this is what makes me most happy, this is how I feel most comfortable engaging with other people. And we started this conversation off talking about what privilege means, and I think that a huge part of privilege is feeling comfortable in your community. I think that if we talk about kids who feel who have the most privilege at ETHS, white kids, wealthy kids, they're these kids who feel most comfortable walking into spaces, walking to the debate team, walking into the Evanstonian, and really taking full advantage of all the resources that are present. I think that when I envision a more equitable Evanston, I envision a place in which more students have the confidence to have their desires, have their interests met, and kind of encourage and have resources brought to them through the school. And so when someone might think, what's the power of me giving money to the boosters? The power is giving kids the ability to say, I belong here, my ideas are valid, my interests are valid, and they're being reciprocated with financial contributions. I know that like Debate, the Evanstonian, SOAR, they're all really wonderful organizations, but that's not where every kid feels the most comfortable in participating, right? That's not every kid's platform. And so in making a more equitable community, it's allowing kids to see their own interests kind of communicated by the school and the school community by saying, we care for you, we value you. And so I think that that's my biggest kind of point of gratitude for the boosters is taking my interests and reciprocating that with support and interest. And so when we kind of engage this dialogue about like where do we want to go from here, I think that's immediately where my mind goes, is supporting kids naturally.
So I'm going to lean in a little bit, and I'm going to tee it up for you a little bit, Quinn, and maybe we can get Steve and Elizabeth to kind of answer. But how do you get that message to the kids that are disenfranchised, that don't feel welcome, that don't feel they have access, right? What role would you say students have in that, Quinn, or alum? And then Elizabeth and Steve, how does the Booster Club sing that song from the highest mountaintop?
I think that's a really wonderful question. And I think that it's the right question to be asking.
Right.
I think that like that the reason why I said that's the right question to be asking is because I think often, we say this idea of like, how can we become more diverse? That's not a tangible step that can be taken, right? I think I really appreciate that question because how do we engage more kids in the community? That's something that an action plan, I think, can be created. Now, and I also want to speak to my own lack of knowledge here because, coming from a 2-parent household, coming from a household where English is the first language, right? A lot of what the ways to engage folks who don't come from that experience is going to be kind of eclipsed. So I think that the first thing to do is to engage more voices of students who will be able to directly speak to that. So I think that's thing number one is, having more folks in the conversation who are able to speak to that experience a little bit more. So I want to kind of say that my answer is kind of framed within a very narrow view. But I think that for me, what I see as being the most is the way to kind of maybe make the kind of school community a little bit more engaging or open to receiving kids, I think is allowing, and it's challenging because it's abstract, but I think allowing kids to be in the driver's seat, I think, and allowing kids to have their own interests be front and center. And I think that emphasizing to them that you have control and you have power. I think that the Dungeons and Dragons and Dunkin' Donuts is such a wonderful example because it's allowing kids to put their own interests in the driver's seat. And when kids have the opportunity to do that, they'll do incredible things. I think like there was the Black Student Union my freshman year, that like what and then there was reciprocal to that, like just kind of like a Black students organization that was just about like having fun, watching movies, eating snacks, like those types of things that meet kind of communities where they're already existing. Kids are already going to be playing Dungeons and Dragons. Kids are already going to be watching movies and hanging out with each other. Allowing the school to say, where do you want to take this? I think that students will answer that question very well. And so I think my answer kind of boils down to 2 parts. One, it's being extremely intentional and recognizing whose voices are not speaking to the boosters right now, whose voices are not speaking to the school board right now, right? Whether that's because they have like obligations at jobs, whether they have to take care of younger siblings, right? All these different things. And then kind of combining that with saying, once we have these voices in the conversation, how can we be an asset to you?
Right. So Steve and Elizabeth, how do you, from your seats, right, ensure that those groups are asked often what they want or what they need or what their interests are, right? Because we have all the action words, or we have all the words, but we don't have the actions to support the words. We have diversity, we have inclusion, we have cultural relevance, but what's the actions that really support those words to create empowering or opportunities to empower disenfranchised groups, as Quinn so eloquently just suggested?
One of the things that strikes me is that in some ways the boosters have this like behind the scenes role. And I think in some ways, one of the things that can push this conversation forward is to have an in front of the scenes role. And one of the things that what you were just saying, Ronnie, made me think of was when I was sitting in a PTA meeting at Kingsley School in District 65, when I was newly divorced and, trying out the whole like 1-parent household kind of gig. And one of the nice ladies on the PTA said, I just don't understand why these parents don't understand how important the PTA is. And I dropped my white wine because I was like, how could you be so stupid? Because it's not about not wanting, it's not about not understanding, it's about it not being about them. And it really, for me, spoke volumes about the way in which we position the conversations,
Yep.
where they start,
Yep.
How we make them accessible, and who we invite. And so one of the things that I think is crucial moving forward with the boosters, I'm a newbie on the boosters, is that we need to have young alums on the board. I think that the conversation amongst people of Quinn's age is different in such a powerful way that needs to be part of the conversation in terms of how we fund, how we operate, and sort of where we put ourselves. I also think that we need to be in front of District 65 because so much of this like pre-gaming of skills happens when kids are not yet in high school, especially for athletics, which is not really my personal jam, but I have a 13-year-old, an 8th grader who plays club soccer. She's been playing club soccer since she was 7. And so she has a, 6-year jump start on kids who haven't played club soccer, but want to play soccer when they get to high school. So we need to also infiltrate the activities that come before high school, where people feel like maybe they don't have that opportunity, that training, all of that stuff. And so I think that's one thing that strikes me. So I feel like right at the beginning of the conversation, we need some young voices. We need some people that aren't in our maybe immediate neighborhood, right? Because think about how Evanston is still set up geographically.
Plenty of people have to think about it every single day.
Right.
So you talk about getting younger people, younger alums to get involved. And we also mentioned that people come home, people come back to Evanston. How can we get Quinn and people like Quinn and people like Steve's son who's going off to school, how can we get them to come back sooner? How can we continue to keep them engaged?
Well, I think the one other thing I just want to point out before I hand it off to somebody else is that as we continue to look at gender differently, gender diversity is going to have a huge impact on how high school athletics, arts, and other endeavors are engaging for kids. And so I think we need to really have a focus that maybe the 50+ crowd doesn't quite understand. And I think that those kind of challenges only get more difficult when that intersectionality kicks in, right? So it's one thing to be queer and white. It's another thing to be queer and Black. It's another thing to be queer, Latino, and not have English as your first language. It's another thing to have all of those things and live in poverty. It's another thing to have all of those things and only have a single parent household. Whatever the combo is, right?
And we know that those kids are a lot less safe in this world.
Right. And
Right.
so I think that's where some younger voices help to support those intersectional challenges and blockages to access for all these things that we want to say yes to. We want to fund everything. I think, Steve, don't we?
Absolutely.
That was a very Brady Bunch moment, Elizabeth. You were looking down. Just got to say. And we say we want this, but it takes work, and it's constant work, and it's ongoing work. But Quinn, what would make you able or wanting with your full schedule, with having to be present where you are, able to stay committed in some way? I mean, obviously you're here today. That's huge. You've just gone to school. You're in the midst of starting off everything. I know it's a really busy time for you. So it says a lot that you're coming on today to participate here. But I guess I'd ask more specifically, like, how do you keep it going? How does one appeal to the kids that need to go and do something else?
Yeah, I think that's a really important question to be asking, because again, that gives us the tools to come up with answers that are concrete actions. I think that, like, when we're focusing on what do we want the outcome to be, we kind of can work backwards and create tangible steps to get there. And so I appreciate the kind of direction that question is going. For me, the word that I think of is vision. I think that what can be done is delivering a vision to students to how their engagement will change things in their community. I think that for me, I can come on to Boosters and make time because I have the vision for how, if I was a freshman at ETHS, hearing words similar to mine would be able to encourage me to join debate, or encourage me to join or go to the club fair and find people who I might be interested in. Or I could, maybe go to a meeting for the newspaper, right? So the reason why I'm here is because I can really clearly see how my actions have an impact. I think that delivering that similar vision to more students would encourage more participation, because I think that ETHS does a great job producing really thoughtful, insightful, intentional young people. And so communicating that vision really clearly to students, I think it's not about inspiring action, because the kids are already inspired, right? It's about saying that we have a platform that you can utilize. And so kind of communicating that vision, I think, is thing number one. And I think that second thing is having the intentionality or the access of boosters be able to be really clearly and easily articulated by people all across the school. And I think by having the kind of resourcefulness of boosters be front and center in a lot of ways. I think that, kids who are on the debate team going to travel tournaments around the country, having them be able to kind of have an understanding of how participation in boosters helps them get to this point, or having kids, who are playing dice in the Dungeons and Dragons club, understand how boosters impacted them, not as like, oh, you should be like, so like bowing down to boosters. You should be grateful for boosters, but also knowing that like, here's a system of support that you have access to in the school that's here for you as a resource. And then I think, complementing that after graduation, you say you can still kind of engage with that, just as you would with like school administration, right? We all know how school administration works. I think allowing boosters to be something like that are two ways for the vision of boosters to kind of connect and resonate with students and kind of inspire action.
Okay. Did you all just hear Quinn Andrew Hughes speak? Did you just hear what he said? It's time to give. It's time to give. I mean, it is so important for all of these groups and all of us. It's not just important for these kids, it's important for our community, because when we raise these kids to be able to be confident and to know that there are different ways to get to the point that kids want to get to, and to have confidence and have community, it's worth everything, because it makes our town a better place. It's the actions. So give what you can. No amount too small. Right, James? There you go. So
and some of the giving doesn't have to be money. We love participation, and joining us in a myriad ways can help us broaden the effect of our organization. And so one of the things I'm so grateful to everybody here is presence. And we sort of can't underestimate that. I think about JT having a younger kid, right, who is just starting this sort of like path towards the high school, and to make comfortable and accessible and inspiring the offerings of the high school from that age forward, I think is really important. And so, I wonder, maybe we need to be present at the activities nights in a different way. I'm not sure.
Well, there's a lot of it that, I mean, to manage expectations of what the boosters are able to do, that it's a slew of volunteers that come in and are taking their talents, quite frankly. People who are good at financials and are playing the financial role. I've always played a marketing or a communications role with media relations and things like that, to be able to kind of use the muscle that we have that is strong for the time that we are able to commit. I think there are just some things you have to manage some of those expectations. But when I think about how often we talk with like Nicole Boyd, who oversees all the clubs and does an amazing job of that, and how many conversations we've had with her saying, we've got more money, where do the clubs need more of this? it really comes down to, there's so much about us being able to say, being able to tell them, and really one of our big messages was getting the kids to be engaged, to be connected, to stay connected. That's been the last 18 months. But we are trying to provide every resource that we can so that kids can stay connected through their chosen organization. And then the other thing of saying, hey, we're the one boosters that's out there giving money to more than a football team, that it is all these other organizations. And those are the two themes that we really drive towards, because ultimately there is a lot of agency left with the students and strengths that they need to find to be able to say, can I start a club? Can I start this organization? What's it going to be like? What kind of support are they getting? Did they get a sponsor, which they have to have for them to be recognized? Did they get a ETHS staff sponsor so they could be a recognized organization that now is able to get funding to be able to do more and possibly pull more kids in and say, wait, what? We've got a Japanese metal, basketball yogurt club. I mean, I'm throwing words together, but I guarantee somebody's making one of those right now. Great. Yep. That's awesome. And so for us to be able to say, we are here to provide funds to every club that is galvanized by the school. And we want every one of those clubs to be able to be as equipped as they can so that their engagement, and that's what it's about. I mean, would we love to see the football team go 8-0? Sure. Do we want to see the marching band, take the next 5 contests they're in? Absolutely. Do we want to see the debate team just crush all the competition? We absolutely do. But the number one reason anyone really, first off, does an organizational element in high school is like Quinn saying, belonging, finding a tribe, finding different people, engaging, growing and learning. There are not many pro marching bands out there, right? So you're not doing it for that. And so if we are able to say we're available and make sure that our communications with Nicole, the athletic directors, the athletic director, everyone in the arts, to be able to say, encourage the students. If they want, they keep doing it. I know they do it all the time, but we just say, keep encouraging the students to start up a new club because we've got funding. We had so much money roll over 2 years ago because we had to say no to some organizations, some clubs, some teams, because we couldn't keep giving money to the teams that are asking for it. Because we aren't just about the sports teams.
Right.
And so we've had rollover. Please allow us to get the money out there. Start a club, add to your club. And so our communications, that's one of our big pieces of communication. I think we could probably do a little bit better than that. If I think about if I was going to go and flip burgers and do hot dogs at the game tonight, maybe we should have something. We should have signage there that says, here's who we funded. I'm going to pull it up real fast. The kinds of funding that we've done in the past.
Steve, I think that's a really good point. And we went in midsummer and spoke with the club sponsors, the arts directors, and the athletic team coaches. And we said, hey, give us your content so that we can create this virtual gala. But we also need to go in and say, here we are with our checkbook.
Yeah. Like JT, you'd probably dig. I mean, if JT in high school, and I can't speak to what was going on. I'm class of 86. How broad the boosters were at that time, I would like to think it was. But if JT knew in high school that the boosters were funding Students Without Borders, Youth Technology Corps, All About Games, Community Service Club.
Oh, I would have been all over it. I mean,
Yeah.
I was in Yamo, I did the Evanstonian, I did choir. I did a lot of activities. My guidance counselor said to me he said to all of us the first week, like, get involved. That was his whole advice for all of high school, was just get involved. And, I think if I had known the boosters were funding things that I was interested in and that I could start a club, that's cool. Like, I don't know, how that message gets out, but just allowing that message to get out and allowing people to say, and allowing to break down the barriers to asking Because I'm a fundraiser, and what we do is we ask people for money, and that's scary. It's scary for anyone, and so, especially for a kid, right? So getting the message out there, like, hey, we want to give you money. Come and ask us for money. It's the first way that you get money is to ask.
And with that said, I'm going to continue to reiterate what Laurice has been doing this whole conversation is give, give, give. Rollover money in the boosters is absolutely an asset. And we need extra money to do extra things.
Yes.
So keep giving and give out of your heart, give out of pressure, give out of responsibility, give out of the fact that it's right, and help your community through providing funds for Boosterpalooza.
Yeah, and in fundraising, we say we ask people to give of their time, talent, and treasure.
There you go.
That's our really polished way of saying
Time, talent, and
volunteer, give your time, give
Can
your.
we just say it? Can we say it?
Skill.
Boosters2021.givesmart.com or text boosters2021 to 76278.
one more time, Steve.
Boosters2021.givesmart.com or text boosters2021 to 76278. We do not have any totes to give away or any coffee mugs, but you'll feel good inside your heart.
There we go. And then, so also part of what again, I'm going back to the crux of this conversation is not only the clubs that are there, not only access to opportunity, as JT mentioned, their guidance counselor pushing them to opportunities, right? We need to push those less engaged to those opportunities as well. If you ask not, you want not. If you don't ask, you don't know. But where you give opportunity and engage in dialogue and conversation, that is exactly where the magic of Evanston happens in all of its diversity. So continue to ask those that you don't see at the table. Continue to ask those that you say you want at the table. Continue to provide opportunity to empower those that you say you want to be empowered, because clearly that is the Evanston way. So let's live our creed.
Absolutely, Ronnie. And so on the tail end of that, we talk about how, JT, when you were in school, I know it was when we were in school, and Quinn, you can let us know if it was really happening when you were in school, but the tracks, the idea that certain people don't get seen, how do we stop that from happening in the boosters with people reaching out? Because as we're talking about, people who feel disenfranchised don't often feel the confidence to be able to be accepted. So what does the reach out look like? What does the, putting a hand out to say, we are here for you, and we really are here for you?
And how do we move from the ridiculousness of assuming that they don't understand, as you mentioned also, Elizabeth?
Well, I'm curious if you all think that the earned honors system, which has replaced the traditional tracking system in the classes, I'm curious if you all think that has had a positive effect on how kids are reached. When I taught high school, I taught in a high school that didn't really have tracking because, our main goal was to get kids in the building.
Right.
Not so much AP classes. And so I have like a very different personal experience of that as an adult than I had as a student in high school.
So
go ahead.
No, I don't know that I could possibly personally answer that question, right? Because I don't have the data to support it. I think, though, the opportunity to engage is to look at the graduation rate, right? Because while we say there are opportunities on the front end, it doesn't matter until the back end
shows that
equals what we did on the front end. So my question would be, based on these new initiatives, how many of these students are graduating with AP and honors credit? And I could be wrong, but I submit that number probably isn't good.
Yeah, I'm sure it hasn't moved the way that they thought it would move. But I also wonder if having a more equal access to the teaching staff makes an impact on how kids are drawn into extracurricular activities. So for example, if, you know, the quote unquote best teachers aren't reserved only for the quote unquote best students, you know, do those teachers draw kids into extracurricular activities in a more, I don't know, equitable
Equitable
way?
way, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the way that we've said, oh, I'm sorry, JT, go ahead.
I was going to say, I had a teacher in high school, Dr. Seidenbecker, who was an English teacher my
Woo!
sophomore year, and he was the faculty advisor for the Pun Club and the Creative Writing Club. And if you joined either of those clubs, you got extra credit in his class. So, I mean, there's ways for teachers to engage students in extracurriculars. The whole point of the Pun Club, and I think they would have loved having booster money, was to get more students to join the Pun Club by making pun-filled announcements for the morning announcements. It was pretty awesome. And I think they would have done really fun things with some money.
I would think that I'm going to assume positive intent about a lot of things first, because at the very, I think at the very least we could say about Evanston is that the intent is there. The intent is there. But I think that I think any teacher who's overseeing a club, any staff who's overseeing a club, my assumption, or what my starting point is going to be, let's not say assumption, is that they're looking for how they can recruit more kids to be a part of that, especially if it relates to what they teach. If you're a science teacher and you've got a science club of some kind, I would like to think that teacher is saying, hey, Jim, why don't you join our club? Why don't you come on in here? Because I think it'll be fun, and I think it'll actually help you in class. When there's an organization, a nonprofit I do a lot of work with, where we talk about STEM and talk to at schools and classrooms where it's more minorities, women, because they are underrepresented in STEM. And one of the things that they go in and talk about, the professionals say, listen, you don't have to say, oh, what physics class do I have to take right now? How about what physics club can you join to determine what your interest is in this, or to be able to learn a little bit more extra, or to be able to say, how can this help me more? And
I love that.
Or what even is physics?
Right. But you know, the bigger issue is, and we don't have that problem. We have an embarrassment of riches in this area, both on the shore and in this school, the largest high school under one roof on the planet, is that we've got a physics club, pretty sure. We can have, and we can make a geode rock club, you know, sponsored by, you know, the rock shop on Main Street. There are a lot of schools that don't have that for the kids to be exposed to. So if we've got those, I would like to think that if you've got a club, and let's say it's a science or STEM, or it's got a number of students that are in an honors or AP class that are participating, and you're the teacher, you're not saying, how am I getting this kid who's in maybe the regulars class, or this kid who's excelling in this, but maybe not as attached, or, oh my God, it's all white kids. That teacher should be going out and recruiting and saying, get them involved here, because that could be the gateway to proving to themselves and proving to the school how well they perform in this area.
This,
The
go
beauty,
ahead, Ronnie.
the beauty of what you said is ask the questions to the people that you haven't asked.
Yeah.
That's the tone and the beauty of that question. JT mentioned that she got a D in honors. JT mentioned that they received a D in
Geometry.
and they had to go back to the regular track.
Yeah, I had to go to the regular track.
Right.
For geometry.
And my wondering is, do you think that in that regular track where all the Black kids were, that they were being asked what their interests were outside of geometry?
I mean, not in geometry class, certainly not.
Right. So
Yeah.
again, the conversation needs to be, we want to create clubs that are diverse. We want to create clubs that aren't just the status quo. So how do we embrace, challenge, and recognize those teachers that are doing something differently through the Boosters Club that engage the disenfranchised?
You know,
Well-
this also reminds me of our conversation, Ronnie, about no cut sports. We had a very pleasant back and forth about, you know, the potential value of opening athletics to
Mhm.
students in a different way. And, you know, I think Ronnie's point to me was, well, no, we're not going to sacrifice excellence, you know, to let everyone play whatever sport, fencing. But I am curious how when we I'm not going to say lower the stakes, but when we change the stakes, do we draw more kids in who haven't had this sort of pre-high school training for whatever it is, athletics, the band, right? Even the marching band assumes that every kid has played their instrument for at least 3 years.
So Elizabeth, that is part of the problem, because by the time these kids get to high school, where are
It's
they
too
getting
late.
experience? Where are they going to be able to fit in? And so Quinn, I want to ask you, what did you feel? Because we've talked about assuming that people are doing the right thing. I don't assume that. I assume for the most part that people aren't doing the right thing, because otherwise I think Evanston High School would look very different right now, even though there are a lot of wonderful things. And so what did you see, Quinn? What did you feel? You just been there and been out. What was it like?
I think that Evanston is more, ETHS as a school is more like a city than it is like a school. You've got different networks of people moving in and out, staying in communities, staying in geographical, areas that sometimes will cross paths, but you can really occupy, a series of like 3 or 4 different school experiences going to ETHS. I think for me, the experience is defined by agency. I think that the agency is a super important word, because when you feel like you have the power to go out and actualize your desires and actualize your goals at a really high level, I think that opens the world of possibility up to you. And I think that certain kids recognize that they have power from a very, very young age. And some kids recognize that systemically they are disenfranchised from power at a very, very young age. What the true ability that an organization like Boosters has, it has the ability to transfer that agency to other people. I think when I think of why what the skill that I'm most grateful for now in college is having experienced debate, or having experienced the Evanstonian, and meeting adults who said, oh, that article idea that you wrote is really cool. Let's put it in the paper. Oh, that argument that you have is really interesting. Let's listen to that. Let's engage that. Now, when I'm at college, I feel confident standing up and speaking out in class. I feel confident going up to a club that I've never heard of before and joining. I feel confident in going up to a group of peers who I've never met before and speaking directly to them, right? That's the power of what agency is. What I think that Boosters has is, and I keep coming back to the Dungeons and Dragons Club because I think it's so cool that kids would go out and create that. That is an acknowledgement that says that your idea is really exciting and valuable. Let's encourage you to continue doing that. And then once kids have that experience, they're going to go out and find resources in the places that they inhabit after high school, because they've had a positive experience doing so in high school, because they've taught that they have agency, or they have the ability to kind of actualize the communities that they want to build. And so the true value when we talk about giving to boosters, you're not just giving kids die, right? You are, that's what it physically manifests in, but you're giving kids agency. Your dollars translate into students recognizing that the platforms that they want to build, the communities they want to foster, the friendships they want to make, right? All the things that we know 100% are positive skills for students to have, that is what it translates into. So physically it's die, physically it's debate tournaments, right? but the true superpower that you're giving, right, is agency. That's what your dollars are translating into. It's not just the physical.
And you have to see that agency, right? So, you know, I think I told Elizabeth this story when we've been on our several calls. My first day at Smith Elementary School, I noticed kids had climbed this 3-story building and were on top of the school roof. And as a new principal, I'm like, get down here. And as they started climbing down, 2 things I started to worry about. One, someone breaking their neck and me losing my job, right? But as they climbed down, I was learning something about them. And when they got down, all 5 of them, I'm like, not you did something wrong. I asked them how you did that. And they eloquently described the Pythagorean theorem, their understanding of physics, their understanding of community, and not leaving anybody behind. And they gave an elaborate description of how they saw the wall, conquered the wall, and made sure everyone was successful. That's the agency. Asking different people a different question to get them engaged in the access and opportunity.
And that agency will last you your whole life. I mean, I'm here to say, like, the agency that I received at Evanston Township High School through doing these activities is the same agency that I have now as I'm starting up a nonprofit consultancy with my partner. Like, it's the same agency that I have. I have two pieces of art behind me. I used to run a variety show, a queer variety show in Chicago. So, you know, it's the agency that I had when I just randomly started a queer variety show in Chicago. Like, you know, it gives kids the ability to think of a thing and then make it happen.
Speaking of this, and because Quinn is a recent graduate, Elizabeth sent us a piece, Quinn, Still Love These Lonely Places, a Ontological Analysis of Evanston. You mind if I read a piece, or would you be willing to read a piece?
Go ahead, you take it away.
I just want to read a small piece, right?
Ontological.
Right.
Ooh.
And it's a bit of a piece. Haunting, and we're talking about the idea of people leaving, the idea of people not receiving, the idea of historically missing a group. And at Evanston Rules, we often talk about the different experiences that happen between the Black and white communities. And we grew up, we both graduated from ETHS in 1980. We both started at Dewey, went to Nichols. I also did some other things, but this is my home. This is Ron's home. And this spoke to me so deeply, and not that it exactly pertains to what we're doing, but it does, right? So I'm just going into a middle paragraph, and it is, haunting is also complicated and deeply implicated in power. The children who are abused the children who are abused growing up are haunted by their parents as they continue the violence onto their kids as parents. The ever-present violences of neoliberal capitalism haunt every time we walk past a homeless person on the street. Every time Black people repeat Black Lives Matter, they haunt America, confronting the unending system of slavery. And that system of slavery, both physical and metaphysical, continues to haunt America as it disrupts and continues to alter the possibility of Black life within the status quo. Indigenous people haunt settler colonial governments every time they continue to assert their right to land and sovereignty. And settler colonism continues to haunt Indigenous life as cycles of suicide, drug abuse, and domestic violence ravages reservations. Where are we? Sorry. Reservations. Power ultimately is haunting. And there's one more piece. Evanston is haunted. It is the specter of those murdered at the Sand Creek Massacre, an event that is integral to the conceptual framework of Evanston, who walk our halls and roam our streets. It is the living deaths of Black subjects who lay the foundation for the human subjects who occupy Evanston. As a product of the 2016 presidential election, liberals popularized the term the Evanston bubble. The Evanston bubble is preserved by and through the violence performed onto these communities. The bubble is a ghost.
I would be remiss if I don't give a huge shout out, and I think a lot of this writing was done by my co-author, Henry Eberhardt, who's a very close friend of mine and a sophomore at Dartmouth right now, studying Black studies and Native American studies. So a huge hand.
And so,
can
of
we
course,
virtual applause to
of
him.
course.
Can we post that on Evanston Rules?
Yes.
I'll have to talk to Henry about it, but I mean, if Henry's okay with that, I would love it.
To both of you, and thank you to Henry. And we are honored to do this, but this is what comes out of Evanston. This is who we are. This is what we see, but we also, if we go into what it is there is a haunting. And until we can work our way through this with all of these programs, with everything, we're going to keep confronting these same questions. We're going to keep having these panels where we sit together and we say, this is available to people, but why aren't they coming? And by the time kids get to high school, they've already been disenfranchised because they've seen those who have been taught that they can go ask for whatever they want, and that they will have opportunities, that they will know they're going to college, that they know that they can get into an AP class, and they know that if they don't, they still have opportunities.
And there's those that don't.
So when you write this speaks so deeply to our planet, and specifically at you and Henry. So I say, when we have brilliance that comes out of our system, like Henry and Quinn, like JT, like Steve, like Elizabeth.
Like Ron and Laurice.
Yeah.
We have to know that certainly there are things we're doing right. So I'm not here to just say that what we're doing is wrong, but there's a reason that we have a haunting, and we have a lot that we have to do to really reach out to make sure that all these children are seen, that they felt like they feel they have a voice, and that it's listened to, not just once. And if they fail, they get another opportunity.
I think
So-
Evanston Rules confronts, right? That's the point, right?
Right.
So if we sort of look at the Evanston Rules of Boosterpalooza, or of the Boosters Club, I mean, the event is the event, yeah? But we need to confront with those questions. That's what chases the ghosts away, is when you confront them. And so I think the thing that I'm wondering about is how, like, what's the format for asking those difficult questions to the adults, and what is the form of asking those engaging questions for the kids? Because it's two separate kinds of questions, I think, but they're both ways of confronting the ghosts that turn into obstacles, right?
Yeah. Well stated.
Well, it's not really, I'm really asking.
Well,
Because
yeah.
I'm not really in a position to state. I'm just being curious.
So great curiosity. It is the questions that come from the people that are confronting the ghost, right?
Yeah.
And we all are confronting the ghost.
And in Evanston, there's a different hear of the message coming from persons of color as opposed to white
Nah.
Evansonians,
Mhm.
right? So I think the difficult conversation is always, there's always an opportunity for it. But those having it have to be courageous enough to move out of status quo or zone of comfort
Yeah.
in order to do that. And by doing that, we can't emotion away the reality and our ability to listen.
Steve, I'm going to ask you to give your push and give us the information.
Boosters 2021.givesmart.com. Let me find the phone number where you can send boosters. It's actually a text, boosters 2021 to 76278, I believe. Let me just double check that I've got that right. But that's where you get up 76278. So that's where you can send your money. It doesn't have to be today. Tomorrow?
Make it
I
today.
don't know.
Can make
We'll
it
take it,
today.
Make it-
we'll take it
Make
tomorrow.
it
we'll take
today,
next
but
week.
yeah, we'll take your check. You know, like Shakespeare said, take the money, right? So we'll
Right.
take it.
I think I didn't look this morning. I've tried to not compulsively look, but we had raised just over $30,000.
Awesome.
We'd like to raise $70,000.
Let's make it a cool 100.
I would love to make it a cool 100. And I think that one of the things that's interesting is that the more we open our process, the more the money will flow. So
Yeah.
there's also this symbiotic relationship where as we continue to grow greatness and broaden that accessibility, it's going to come back to us. So it's not like giving up a piece of the pie. It's like making the pie bigger. You
It's
know?
like gumbo. When you add the shrimp, the crab to the roux, the great chicken and the sausage, the gumbo tastes better.
It does, man. I mean,
We can make it Impossible Burger for those who don't eat meat.
okay, thanks. I'm with Laurice, but I also want to just ask a logistical question. So like in like the most literal way, what do you think asking those questions looks like? Are we talking about from a student perspective surveys? Like booster sponsored surveys through teachers who have the most daily contact with our kids?
Let's go around.
Yeah, I think you know, I call it the what next, right? So what happens
Yeah.
after the survey, right?
Yeah.
And what power does the survey yield in terms of implementation, right? But definitely surveys, discussions are all part of the consistency that needs to be created around these difficult conversations, right?
Mhm.
So, if you leave the bear sleep, if you don't poke the bear, he's going to continue to sleep. So I suggest let's poke the bear so the bear wakes up, right? And use every opportunity through any means necessary to poke the bear, whether it's surveys, whether it's conversations, whether it's roundtable discussions. But it's got to be also having those people in the room that are comfortable asking those difficult conversations, right? Laurice and I always talk about on our podcast, we don't need allies, we need accomplices. And accomplices are those people that are going to get scarred up, that are going to get dirty, that are comfortable losing friends or access for what is right morally and ethically.
Yeah. I mean, it's like we always say, the first Pride was a riot, guys, right? It was not a parade.
Right.
Right?
And this has to have that similar atmosphere
And it
for
has
it to be effective.
Yep.
And it has to continue day after day after day after year after year after year. I mentioned this sign that I see at certain marches that say, I can't believe I still have to protest this shit. And I disagree with that because I believe we always have to protest to keep our rights. We always have to get up in the morning with a determination of what we're going to do. And if we don't, they won't stay. And I think we have recognized that. But I just want to get back one more time. I constantly get stuck with those who are disenfranchised, for those who really don't dare to dream. And I really want us to be able to come up with something. I want it to continue the thought of how we reach these kids who have stopped dreaming and stopped believing that they can do anything and make a difference and are afraid to not look smart or like they're good at something because they've been told they aren't for so long. And even something that seems really easy, like starting a boosters club, for many people, it's just not.
Right.
And so I know we're talking about it. I'd like that conversation to continue. And I think it's important to continue because I just know that without the support of parents or feeling like, you know, every day going to school is a trial, or that you have to get a certain grade to be able to participate in. And what that does is that just knocks a whole lot of people out. So I hope that that conversation will continue. I think you guys are doing great, great things. I'd love in a last moment to hear from everyone, just if anyone has a story, a small story or a remembrance of their experience at ETHS, whether it be boosters or not. I'd love to hear something. If anyone wants to start, I'm not going to call on anyone, but I'd love to hear it.
I'll just go. I'll state mine. I mean, I wasn't a good athlete and I wasn't a good musician, but I did both when I was there. You know, I was JV my senior year of soccer because I didn't work out hard enough going into senior year. I mean, why would I? But I mean, I didn't have that kind of dedication, but I like to play. I mean, I was Alan Hackman was always a better clarinet player than me in concert band and marching band, but I really loved doing it. And so for my memory of, you know, I had fond memories of high school. I had great memories of high school, and I really enjoyed just the idea of what groups I joined, and that I joined them because I liked doing it. It wasn't because I was amazing at it or that I was going to do it for the rest of my life, but I liked the different group of people. And the soccer team was a different group of people than the marching band. And it was super cool to see, you know, and be a part of those different groups and learn and grow that way. And again, I will go back to saying one of my best moments at Evanston for why I think we're striving, we're always, you know, have intent, is on one night we were in a packed auditorium welcoming a sitting senator from New Jersey, Cory Booker, for his book tour. Don't care your politics. We had 2 sitting senators and a representative in that room, in a packed room, talking about race in America, things like that. And on the very same night, at the other end of the building, we had the state swim championships going on, because this is a community and a facility and organization and all of the things that we have at least available, if not used or open to everybody. We have available this wide spectrum of possibilities. It's about getting those students, like you're saying, to say, go try it. You should try it. I want you to try it. You could succeed. And if you don't succeed, at least you tried it. But we've got these availables, and the boosters want to be able to fund them so that more can be included.
Awesome. Awesome.
And I will say that Evanston Township for me created an amazing community and made me feel excited about being in high school. And I will say that the extracurricular activities, I mean, that's the reason I'm here today, because I know Elizabeth, because I did stage crew, because I was a costumer, and I costumed her in a show, like when she was a junior and I was a sophomore, senior. And, you know, like those connections last. And that's the reason why we come back to Evanston. You know, I just moved back here in 2021, or in 2020. So, you know, I think it's something that drew me back here, as a lot of my friends are still here.
For me, my moment was always the time when you were rolling your suitcase out in 8th grade to go on a debate trip, walking out to the van and loading up, and the excitement to go to Atlanta, Minnesota, Boston. That will always be my number one.
Nice.
I think mine is a little bit as a parent right now. And my daughter, who has struggled academically, begged us to let her go to ETHS. And last weekend, I took her to the football game so that she could meet up with some friends that she made in her very first week at ETHS. and she's a drummer and excited to see the music that's happening at the football games and what is potentially out there for her. And it just gave me this view of our high school as a place where we should be making every single activity available to every single kid, regardless of how they got to the high school, what their academic standing is, what their race is, whether or not their parents can afford their trombone, and whether or not they feel comfortable in their own skin yet, based on, their gender assigned at birth and what they might feel they are now. Whether they are autistic, whether they are the children of mayors or senators, whatever child walks through those doors, they should have access to the things that make them passionate humans. And we have the potential to support those dreams. And so that's why I joined the boosters. That's why I reached out to Ron and Laurice, who I think have this incredible platform for encouraging not just diversity and inclusion, but access to everything life should offer to everyone. So our job is to take those shoulds and make them into coulds. And then dids.
And you do that with your donations.
There you go. Give it to us, JT.
So please join us. If you go to the Boosters website, which Steve is going to say again, I think it's boosters2021.givesmart.com.
Yep.
You can register for our gala tonight. It is virtual. You will have access to our pop-up in-person event tomorrow at Temperance from 4 to 7. We want to see you. We want to have a beer with you or a non-alcoholic drink. We want to be able to share our success and really broaden our experience of ETHS, of Evanston, of the world. So I thank you so much, Ron and Laurice. I'm so grateful that you joined us and worked with us this year. And I hope we have a long, long partnership.
I do too. You guys are all awesome. I am thrilled to have met you, JT, thrilled to have seen you again, Steve, and really thrilled to have met you as well, Quinn. And I wish you just such an excellent experience ahead. You are awesome. And we're here just rooting you on.
I
Thank you so
want
much.
to thank you all from the bottom of my heart, and remind you that you chose to take the blue pill. So there is no getting out. We are connected and going to stay connected. The work you guys do, the work you're going to continue to do is just remarkable, and continue to change the world in the way you choose to do so, because your effort is clearly making the world a better place.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thanks,
Peace.
Go
everybody.
Boosterpalooza,
so
go
much.
Boosters 2021.
Give, and then give some more.
Thank you
all
so
again.
much, everyone, for coming this morning.
Bye.
Have a great
Bye.
day. Bye all.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you, Quinn.